Tuesday, September 9th, 2020. The first order of business is the approval of the July 22nd, 2020 minutes. Do any of y'all have additions, corrections? Have you had a chance to look them over?
Anyone on the phone have any additions or anything to the minutes?
No, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I'll move to accept them as drafted.
okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 5 aye.
All right. There's no one here in opposition because there's no one else, so they'll be moved forward. And the next order of business is the following public hearing item. It is a petition of Edgar J.T. Perro Jr. to rezone approximately 83 thousandths of an acre at 708, 710, and 712 Court Street from B1 Limited Business District to B4 Urban Commercial District to allow the use of the property for residential and office uses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of Planning Commission, these three properties are zoned B1 Limited Business District, and the city's future land use map designates them for downtown use. Downtown is the central commercial core of the city and appropriately contains a mix of retail, entertainment, restaurant, employment, residential, institutional, and other uses. The Downtown 2040 Master Plan emphasizes that this area should retain its urban character and that we should support the reuse and revitalization of historic buildings. The purpose of this rezoning is to allow the owners flexibility in office and residential uses within the existing buildings. The existing B1 zoning requires ground floor commercial uses, whereas the B4 urban commercial zoning does not, and offers more flexibility in that commercial could be located elsewhere in the building or not required at all, but commercial still is a potential use. Parking is available behind the buildings via an alley accessed from 7th and 8th Streets, with more parking at 714 Court Street. There is also on-street parking on Court Street. The rezoning of the property to B4 Urban Commercial District should have little impact on the area other than promoting the revitalization. Flexibility in the use of historic structures is consistent with the Downtown 2040 Master Plan and other recent rezonings in the area. The Planning Division recommends approval of this petition.
Great, thank you, Rachel. So who is here to present this? Could you please come up, sign your name, state your name, and tell us about the project?
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, Edgar J.T. Perro Jr., partner in Perro & Perro, which is a real estate holding company. I'm currently a resident of Amherst, Virginia, but still have properties in Lynchburg. Thank you. Just really short and sweet. I'll give you a little overview of the properties. There are three properties: 708, 710, 712 Court Street. We've owned these. My family, a combination of my brother, myself, and my father, have owned. And 714, which is my father's property, but 708, 710, and 712 have been owned by the family for going on 20 years now. And they've always been apartments since we've had them. 708 has been 2 apartments, and then there was a tailor shop on the first floor meeting the B1 requirements. 710 was the law firm of Eric Peters, and there was an apartment below that law firm that's been occupied for 20 some years. And then 712 was another law firm that the name's slipping right now, but a very nice gentleman owned that firm until his recent death, and then it was Killis Howard's building. Thank you, I appreciate that, Jam. So we purchased that just recently and decided we wanted to renovate it as a tax credit project. That Killis was only using the first floor primarily. The rest of it was just storage or empty. But you can see where that was originally. At some point that had multiple apartments in it. What we'd like to do is put 4 apartments in it, 1 per floor. That includes the terrace level, the basement level. That's about 700 plus feet per floor, so big apartments. We're not trying to pack people into the houses. We don't believe in that. It would be a tax credit restoration project. And while we were debating rezoning 712, and the reason we have to rezone is because the lot size itself is too small to allow apartments per the B1 requirement. The B1, as you guys can recall when we redid the zoning ordinance, the B1 is really in this instance, it's kind of like an expansion model or a suburban type model where you require a certain size lot size. That's just not feasible in downtown Lynchburg, which is exactly why the B4 was developed. The demand for office on Court Street has been declining significantly. You've seen there's precedent for other rezonings for the same reasons. There used to be all law firms, and now it's more residences than it is law firms on Court Street. The demand for office in 708 has pretty much gone away. I've got a fellow using it as a home office, so I meet the requirements there. And Mr. Peters retired, so 710 is vacant, and we'd like the opportunity to put. We said 4 in that, but really I think we'll just have 2 apartments, one larger apartment, and then a smaller studio apartment. So what we've asked for the B4 zoning really gives us the flexibility to go back and forth and really adapt to what the market wants, and at the same time being consistent to what the intent of the B4 zoning in the downtown feel. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all may have, and I'll finish filling this sheet out.
Thank you, Mr. Perro. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of this petition? Okay. Anyone here who is in opposition to the petition? All right, well, at this point then, we'll close the public hearing and open up to questions from the commission for the planner or for Mr. Perro.
I don't have any questions. It seems pretty straightforward. I think apartments would be, a continuing improvement of the area and of the downtown. And I understand what he was saying about the lack of lawyers renting. I mean, I've seen that myself. So I would be in favor of it.
It's a pretty straightforward situation as far as I'm concerned. I'm just happy to see the building is going to be used a little bit more intensely, because it is, there's that and other space down on Court Street that's just sort of sitting there languishing. So I'm happy to see it, and I'm going to vote in favor of it as well.
Yeah, I see a lot of new things. Actually, one of my neighbors owns a building across the street and has had a lot of interest. The beautiful places along there. It's nice to see it being able to be reused. Anybody on the phone have any questions?
Dave or Bob, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so this is Dave.
Okay.
Could Mr. Perro just real briefly expand on a tax credit restoration project, please?
Explain the tax credit project? I'm sorry, Mr. Peralta, what was the question?
Yes, just explain that in a little bit more detail. I'm supporting what you're doing. I just want to know, all the info about it.
Okay, 712 Court Street is really in pretty good shape for what it is. We will work through the historic planning, the HPC, to make sure that our plan syncs up nicely. What we're doing, what we're planning to do is basically just paint the interiors, repair the walls, take them back, rewire where we need to rewire, drop the exterior mounted electrical outlets. So they're mounted on the exterior of the interior walls, if that makes any sense. They're proud of the walls. They need to be in the walls, in the baseboards. We need to upgrade the HVAC. We already redid the cornice of the building. That cornice was falling apart. John Sosowski helped out with that. He did a beautiful job in restoring it. We're going to restore the porch, the front porch, to what it was. Basically, it will look identical to what it did probably 30 years ago, which is our intent. To help defray some of the costs, we will be applying. We have applied for tax credits. We have received approval for the tax credit process. We will not syndicate it. It's not a value of such that it could be syndicated, and we'll use the tax credits to our personal benefits. But that's the plan. Did that answer your question, Mr. Peralta?
Yeah, I guess the tax credit aspect of it, I mean, how does that work? Is this something that the state or the city reimburses you for the work that you're doing?
It's an application to the National Park Service and the Virginia Department of Historic Preservation. And what happens is once they approve the work, I file the paperwork to do it. They say, yes, this is a credible project. Then I file some more paperwork. They say, yes, what you're planning to do meets the guidelines for preservation and restoration. And then I have to prove to them that we have actually done that. Then they come back and they will issue us a credit. When I say us, that's my partner and me. They will issue, which is my brother, they will issue us a credit of, the state will give us 25% of the eligible expenses, and the federal government will give us 20% of eligible expenses that we could then use as a credit. So in lieu of paying state tax, the qualifying state tax or qualifying federal tax, we can tap into that credit. So it will not affect local dollars whatsoever. It affects the money that's being sent to the state or the feds.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Bob, did you
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, I'm set with that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did he second that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well then, without further ado, we can go ahead and vote on that. All in favor to move this forward?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye from Dave.
And all opposed? There are none. So, Mr. Pero, you'll, I'm sure, have that in front of City Council, and good luck. Be nice to see those getting used. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Okay. Our next order of business is the public hearing on the petition of TPB Enterprises LLC to rezone approximately 17 9/10 of an acre acres at 127 Brunswick Drive from R4C High Density Residential District with conditions to R4C High Density Residential with conditions to amend previously approved proffers for an increase in units from 270 to 280. So Rach, will you be presenting that as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Commission. This project has been in front of you several times in the past few years. You may remember as it's evolved, it's had some changes over the years. It's now known as the West Edge Development, I believe. It was also formerly called Midtown, Reserve at Dreaming Creek. It's been a couple iterations. But the main gist is this is Candlewood Court, Timberlake Road, Kroger is in this area over here, commercial up front and residential apartments in the back. So the purpose of today's hearing is that as part of the most recent rezoning in 2018, the maximum number of apartment units was proffered to be capped at 270 units. The developer is requesting to amend this proffer to add 10 more units, bringing the total maximum up to 280 apartments. All other proffers remain unchanged, all the architectural proffers, that sort of thing, none of that changes. These 10 units would be split between two of the buildings that were shown on the original layout. These additional units were also accounted for in the 2018 traffic study, which was approved by the city engineer at that time. The addition of 10 units should not have a significant impact on the area. The traffic impacts would be minimal and were already accounted for in the approved traffic analysis. The development would not change in terms of layout. And so there is a discrepancy in your packet that I'll point out. Initially, it says that we are recommending denial of the rezoning and the CUP, but that is a typo. It's a holdover note. There is no CUP associated with this. It's just a rezoning to amend the proffers. And planning staff does recommend approval of the rezoning.
Thank you. And who's here to present this proposal?
Good afternoon, members of Planning Commission. My name is Daniel Cyrus. I represent TPB Enterprises, the developer of this project. As you know, we've been here a couple times before in the past for other parts of this project. Essentially, what we're here to do today is to just correct a clerical discrepancy that occurred in the original rezoning. So the original unit count that was shown on the plans was 280 units. In the rezoning documents that were submitted, 270 units were submitted. So we're not actually making any change to any of the buildings. But essentially what happened was there's 2 buildings that have basements that weren't accounted for originally. And so due to the topography of the site, we need to have the basements on those units. So that's the way that it makes sense for it to work. So essentially nothing else changes. There's no major change. So I'm not going to make it more complicated than it is. If you guys have questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And I'm going to fill this sheet out.
Great, thank you. Anybody here to speak on behalf of this? Or is there anybody here to speak in opposition? No one here speaking in opposition. Okay. Well, we'll close public hearing and questions from the commission?
I just had a question, and I noticed that in the application that one of the buildings, it was going to be, I think, 6 units, and the other was going to be 4 units. And so those basements were shown on the original plan. They just weren't, those units were shown on the original plans. They literally just were not included in the count in the original applications. Is that what you're saying?
When you look at the topography of the original plan, it's very evident that those buildings have basements. There's more than a 10-foot elevation change from the front of the building to the rear. And the site, since we live in the Hill City, obviously has terrain. So like many apartments in the city of Lynchburg, they're split basements. So the rear are basement units. So there's 2 different size buildings. There's 42-unit buildings and 28-unit buildings. So the smaller buildings have 4 units in the basement, and the larger buildings have 6 units in the basement.
So you had the apartments in the plans, you just didn't, when you physically did the count for the application, somehow they just got overlooked.
So somehow there was a discrepancy that happened there. But like I said, everything else was designed around the original unit count. So the traffic study, everything else was designed around that unit count. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm going to check with,
Bob and Dave, do you have any
Bob and
questions for the developer?
No, this is Dave. Just for the record from Dave, I've been against all of these petitions in this area. However, that's not a reason to stand in the way of fixing this type of mistake.
Oversight.
So I have no problem with this.
it sounded,
I agree too, Rachel.
Okay, Bob was just saying, Dave was saying that he was against the project as a whole initially, but he's not going to make a fuss over 10 units clerical error.
right, in this case. Right. And I have no questions with it. I can see how something like that could happen, and it doesn't look like the plan had really changed. So I don't see any problem with it. Anybody want to make a motion then?
I move to accept the rezoning request as stated.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, well, all in favor?
Aye.
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 This is Bob. Aye.
This is Dave. Aye.
Great. And no opposition. That'll be going to City Council, and thanks for bringing that to us. Good luck and have a good day. Okay, so we have some new business, and I'm not sure if we want to you want me to read through these all, and then you can go through it, or if you need to do them one by one. All right, I will just read through them all. It's some road naming, street naming, consideration of naming a private street West Edge Way related to that project, consideration of a renaming of a portion of a street from Hillcrest Avenue to Caroline Street, consideration of naming the streets in the Fleetwood Drive subdivision, and then naming a new street, Stables Lane, in the Randolph Stables subdivision.
First in front of you, I have a consideration of naming a private street West Edge Way. As per protocol with street namings, we're bringing this before you to comment. Is there a way I can zoom in here?
Is there any comment on that? Because this is just naming the ingress and egress street, right? Into
Yes,
the,
mhm.
yeah. Anybody with us on the phone have any comment or question?
Dave or Bob, do you have any concerns about the name West Edge Way?
No, it makes perfect sense to me. This is Bob.
Yep, this is Dave, I agree.
Okay.
All right.
Next one?
All right, next we have a proposition to rename a street from Hillcrest Avenue to Caroline Street. This is a street that, interestingly enough, is one street that went from Caroline and turns in between to Hillcrest. And since we're about to have some development or some different proposals going on, for E911 purposes, for continuity's sake, we would like to name the entire thing Caroline. We're putting this in front of you for comment.
I think that was a new section they built at one point, wasn't it?
Mhm.
To connect the two streets, yeah. I don't have any comment.
Bob or Dave, do you have any comments?
No, this makes perfect sense to me as well. I wish we did this more in Lynchburg.
Yeah, this is Dave. This brings to mind the urban legends that the streets were named after old cow trails and cow paths. So I don't know if this reinforces that or not.
Or the next one is the Fleetwood.
Oh, okay. Drive. Chair Rogers, before we have a consideration to name the streets in Fleetwood Drive subdivision, again, like with the first item, we are naming streets for addressing purposes.
Sounds good to me.
Bob or
Bob
Dave,
or
any
Dave?
comments?
I don't. Do you, Dave?
No, none from Dave.
All right, and then your last one.
All right, lastly, we have the consideration to name a street Stables Lane. And again, this is before you for comment.
I like the name. Guess.
I have no comment on this one either. Rachel, this looks like a smart move too.
Agreed from Dave.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, do we have any other business? Do we have any things that the commission wants to address? Any motions to?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
A second.
Okay, well then, we will, unless there's any other comments, we will hold the vote to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, have a great day.